we've seen Doctor Who recently. Unfortunately, for our sins, we've experienced it, and it hasn't always been pleasant. That's for sure. But recently, like Christopher Eccleston was asked about whether he would come back to play Doctor Who again. And for people who don't know, he was the guy who brought Doctor Who back from the dead, way back in the heady days of 2005, when Mahler was just like a small, like, eldritch child. This was when Doctor Who came back from like a probably 15-year hiatus. And David Tennant might have been the guy who popularized it once it got established, but Christopher Eccleston was the guy who actually brought it back from the grave alongside Russel T Davies. And he was asked if he would ever come back to Doctor Who, and this was his response, and I thought it was very interesting.
Obviously, it's the 60th anniversary of the show this year, and like I said, people would love to see you both come back at some point, but Christopher, for you, your experience...
Only one person.
No, come on, everyone.
And that was my mother.
Guys, wouldn't you love
who's over there with the beard. Mum, you need to shave.
You'd all love to see Christopher come back as the Doctor, right? See? Now, what would have to happen for that to become a reality?
Sack Russel T Davies, sack Jane Tranter, sack Phil Collinson, sack Julie Gardner, and I'll come back. So can you arrange that?
Did you find it...
I'll pause it just in case we get copyright claimed there, but...
Look at the actresses.
Yeah. First thing I was going to say, like, I love how Billy Piper has barely changed in like almost 20 years, whereas Christopher Eccleston seems to have aged about 50 years since then.
I didn't recognize him first when I saw this clip. I was like, who's that guy?
Why does he look like Santa Claus now? Like, yeah.
It's Christmas. You know, it makes sense, right?
You can even see his face there. Fuck him.
Yeah. Because it's funny, right? I thought that the reason he left after one season was he just didn't want to get typecast as the Doctor. He wanted to move on to other acting projects, and he just didn't want to get too associated with the character, which seemed reasonable at the time. I can get that. But then you find out this, and he does go on to talk a little bit more about the problems behind the scenes, and he said it was a lot to do with studio politics and people like doing double deals and stuff behind the scenes and screwing each other over. And he seems to have a lot of ire for Russel T Davies. And I don't know, man. I think it's kind of interesting, the shift in attitude towards Russell over the past few weeks.
Just to clarify, are you aware or not aware of how long he's been saying this stuff?
I wasn't aware until I saw this. I didn't know what his attitude was.
Because his exit from Doctor Who was relatively famous, right? In terms of I think I've talked about it with Gary, but I remember adoring him in the 2005 reboot, and then finding out that he was going and getting replaced by some guy who I'd only seen on Casanova as a TV show. I was like, you are fucking kidding me. Tennant's my favorite Doctor, by the way. So he really proved himself with that one. However, the nature of his leaving was very slapdash and weird. And there was always floating comments and vague references and interviews with him where he was always very clearly frustrated. And just over the years, he's let loose a lot of different things about how much he fucking hates the people. He loves all the people who work on the show, who are like all of the, the lower level sort of like people, making the sets or holding the lights or doing all those sorts of things. But he's made it clear he despises the people at the top. And I guess that's a more culminative statement on the fact that he's like, get rid of every single person who works on that shit, and then I'll come back is representative of his experience. Because I think they wanted him to stay on, and he probably would have stayed on longer, but that something happened that was somebody didn't like. I think it could have been something to do with the treatment of the workers or something. I can't remember.
Well, I'll play just the remainder of the clip just so we can get a sense of what his position is on it, because he does go into a little bit more detail here.
Like associated with the character given...
Not at all. I love being associated with the character. Just don't like being associated with those people and the politics that went on in the first series. The first series was a mess, and it wasn't to do with me or Billy. It was to do with the people who were supposed to make it, and it was a mess. And the first series of any show, Billy did Confessions of a...
Cool girl.
you know, first series, nobody wants to know. The BBC were like, we're going to keep a big distance from this. And then as soon as it was a success, they were all up close going, I was responsible for that, but they were all like at a distance, like this is a folly, Eccleston's folly, Piper's folly, Russel T Davies' folly. And then when it worked, suddenly, oh yeah, I worked on that. They wouldn't come anywhere near us. And then they jump on the bandwagon. Those kind of politics, I'm not very good at handling. I can't swallow that shit.
Wow.
The audience was sure to do with that exactly.
He's clearly a man who's at the stage of life and his career where he's like, no fucks given. I'm just going to tell it like it is. I got to respect that.
Yeah, I mean,
I clearly had a bad
I
experience.
appreciate it. That's the thing, yeah. And there's plenty of actors. It's funny we talk about with Marvel all the time, with directors and actors who just don't want to be a part of it because of their experiences with it. But I mean, yeah, he's notoriously been at odds with the production of Doctor Who, and it's such a shame too because, of course, I think all of us would have loved to have seen more of his Doctor, but that you know, to some extent, you have to respect the fact that we shouldn't be trying to force someone into a miserable situation just because we want to see more of their character in a story.
I mean, I think the fact that he was even there doing interviews about this stuff was progress because, like, for a long time, he wouldn't even go to conventions or anything to do with Doctor Who. So, like, he started to come out of his shell in that respect and speak his mind a bit more.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but he's had to was saying, like, he started doing more and more things like that because he was going to make money from it because he needed money. I think that's why he engaged more with the different like appearances to talk about these things. It's a lot of stuff that Gary's covered. I think he's particularly annoyed at Christopher Eccleston for a couple of things. I don't have as much context. If he was here, he would tell you all about it.
Gary, where are you?
But the world needed him most.
I would have genuinely loved to see a Doctor Who special where it was like him, Matt Smith, and David Tennant. I think the interplay between the three of them would have been fucking great. But it would have had to have happened about 10 years ago. Like,
you don't want the new guy involved? You wouldn't invite him along?
I just no. Like if I wanted to film season 2 of It's a Sin, I would have him. But yeah, otherwise probably not. I don't get a sense of like people being terribly enthusiastic towards Gatwa yet.
Man, I watched that first special. That's all I've watched, and that was hard going.
I don't even. Yeah, I don't know, man. I got no faith in Doctor Who going forward. Those 3 specials, that was a nightmare.
Molly told me backstage that Rose is his favorite character now.
Why did you? You're supposed to keep that to yourself. I don't like the specials. Yeah.
Do you mean Billy Piper's Rose, or do you mean the new Rose?
Yeah, not the original Rose. The new Rose.
She is
the new and better, the improved Rose.
Yeah, she's new. She's neither, and she's more, and I don't know. Who knows what she is?
She's everything.
She's everything to everyone, and that's the important thing. Yeah,
they are the worst actor I've ever seen.
Not great. Yeah. I'm not gonna lie. But yeah, I was just gonna say as well, like the attitude towards Russel T Davies, like it's so interesting to see the shift over the past few weeks, because I think up until fairly recently it was one of cautious optimism. You know, Jodie Whittaker was gone, Chris Chibnall was gone. Okay, 2 people that like were not good for the Doctor Who franchise. Hey, the guy who did all the good stuff is back, and the most popular Doctor of the current era is back as well. That seems great. It seems like everything's looking up. And then we actually saw what he produced, and it became pretty clear pretty quickly. This is not the same Russel T Davies that was writing 10, 15 years ago. He is a different person now, and he has very different reasons for wanting to do this show, and they have nothing to do with telling good sci-fi stories.
It's a big shame, but that's there's not much to add to that in terms of a summary of what's happened here. I don't know what I think of him as a writer anymore.
Is it just this getting old panic to stay relevant, and they just grab hold of these talking points and these what's popular in the media now? Like, is it just that desperation as they get older? Because like, why does he even care about half this shit?
I think in his case, like, because he's very openly gay, and so like that means a lot to him, and so like one of his most like his biggest recent projects was It's a Sin, which is all about like the gay culture back in the 1980s with the rise of like the AIDS epidemic and stuff, and that was obviously something that was very near and dear to him. Fair enough, but like it doesn't have the platform of Doctor Who. It doesn't have the mass appeal of something like that. And what you get then is, okay, this show is in dire straits. We need someone to come back who can steady the ship. Would you be willing to do it, Russell? Yeah, sure, I'll do it on the condition that I'm allowed to talk about the things that I'm really interested in and I'm really passionate about now. And it just happens to be, you know, all of this stuff. And so he comes back, he gets those 3 specials with Tennant, and then, you know, the ongoing series with Gatwa. And what are they all about? It's all about like gender ideology and you know, transgenderism, LGBT stuff, like all of that, all of the things he cares about. It's a platform. It's not about like wanting to tell an interesting sci-fi story anymore. It's about the social messaging of it. That's what drew him back into it.
Yeah. And I think, you know, in those circles, wokeness has reached such a critical mass that it's almost impossible to be in any kind of influential position and resist it. Because I don't think a person just, you know, everyday person going about their life really knows how to argue against the philosophies that wokeness is pushing. Because even something as simple as like, you know, if someone comes up to you on the street and says, defend monogamy, defend marriage, you'd be like, I don't know, we just do it. You know, it's like there are all these things that we just do that feel normal, feel natural. And someone comes and tells you, no, that's abnormal. You've been brainwashed. Or, you know, or even the overarching idea that women are oppressed and you know, we've created this heteronormative societal structure and patriarchy, and all these people are suffering. And so then here comes this ideology that's selling idea of acceptance. And you know, what kind of reasonable person doesn't want to be accepting of diverse people and ideas? And so you say, okay, fine, that sounds good. Like, why wouldn't I accept that someone's grappling with their sexuality? So let me make sure that they're more welcomed in any kind of social circle. And then that happens with trans people, and so you're like, yeah, of course. And so it kind of just consumes everybody, and everybody gets initiated because that base entry line is acceptance and love, and it's the same thing as you know, Rachel Zegler and Halle Bailey talking to each other and saying, you know, look at us, we're so positive. Let's reject anyone that's even a little critical of us and irritated with us. But in the meantime, if Rachel Zegler is being critical, that's not really looked at as critical and bad, because you know, it's serving this higher purpose of gender ideology and like pushing diversity and like that whole woke umbrella. And so it's this brainwashing that's happened for a lot of people, even though they claim like we're the ones brainwashed. And granted, like, you know, we all like accept things without really thinking about it too much, but they claim that the brainwashing is on the other end. So it's like these two ideologies going up against each other, and one of them is being really, really successful.
I think the BBC, particularly, like when you're talking about people who make things like Doctor Who, they are a unique case in that they, if you want to take like the most far left sort of woke people that like exist in Hollywood, that is barely a patch on what the BBC is. But it is that way because they believe that they are still fighting a war within their own organization. Because I've spoken to people, like I've been at publishing events down in London, and I've spoken to people who work at the BBC, and they said to me, like with a straight face, 100% serious, oh, the BBC is a deeply conservative organization, and we're still fighting to try and fix that. And I, for about 10 seconds, I didn't know what to say. And all I could say to them was like, look, I can't speak to the culture within that organization. I don't work there. All I can say is based on what you guys make, that really doesn't seem to be the case. Like that doesn't line up with what I've seen from what they produce. But that's the mindset that they have, they still see themselves as like an organization that needs fixing. And so it's only going to get even more extreme as they go forward, because they see this as an ongoing war within the BBC and then the wider British culture. That's the scary thing.
Yeah.
It's hard to believe that's how they see themselves. Like, when that person said that, you must have been like waiting for the laugh to the sort of.
I legit, like I say, I legit just didn't even know how to respond. I was looking at them like, "Are you joking? Like, is this like a piss take or something that I'm just not getting?" And it's like, nope, they were deadly serious.